Thanks for asking.
I understand you're going to read out such live questions as we have time for. So I've got a list which we've got questions already set. But I don't know how we want to do it. I might read one out and then ask you whether you're ready. Okay? I'm sure there'll be loads. I'm assuming you'll process those that are acceptable to read out.
Yes. If I say there's no questions from here, that means there may be a few.
Yeah. And we'll have rather limited time because he's got a tight schedule, so we'll shut it down pretty sharp at 1 o'clock.
So I'll pick 2 questions if there are 2 questions.
Okay, a couple of minutes until Jimmy Wales takes the stage. Okay, all this work. Right, I'm just going to stand up for this. Okay. All this work, people, all this work. There you go. Okay, I'll give you a view of the audience, see what it does here. powers this one at me. Let's grab it. Thank you. Okay. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow the hashtag WP10 and also search on Twitter for Bristol and Jimmy Wales. You'll find all the tweets coming out of Bristol. And there's also plenty of blog posts and photos, loads more stuff.
Say that I've got the access account now, and I'm following you. So good. You've just seen on Twitter, on Facebook, but not on Twitter. I don't know if you both. So anything you post, I'll find. Cool.
Okay, standing by. 2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the University of Bristol, and particularly welcome not only to those of you here in the room, but those of you watching through the wonders of the webcasting that we're doing at the moment. My name is Guy Orpen. I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research and Enterprise at the University of Bristol, and it's my pleasure to host today's event. And in particular, in a moment, to introduce Jimmy Wales as co-founder and promoter of Wikipedia. I'd like, before we get to that, part of Wikimedia UK, Steve Virgin and his colleagues, who've contributed an immense amount of the work involved. The Bristol Festival of Ideas, under whose aegis this is running. Bristol City Council, who are hosting the webcast. HP Labs in Bristol, who've provided some of the sponsorship, as has the University of Bristol itself. So thank you to all of those. Thank you for the audience for being here in such large numbers at such short notice. One small thing, could I ask you to turn your electronic devices to silent for the remainder of the proceedings to avoid the usual fiasco of exciting ringtones interrupting our event. So, without further ado, can I say what a great honour and pleasure it is that Bristol be the location for this public event, public talk. This is the only public talk that Jimmy will be giving during his visit to the United Kingdom as part of the 10th anniversary of Wikipedia. And it's testimony to the interest and the dynamism of the local community here that we have such a big audience at relatively quick notice, so engaged, providing input already through electronic means to this event. We're going to hear in a moment about the development and the future of Wikipedia, and I would say that it's a particularly appropriate location for Jimmy to talk about these issues because of the nature of the city that we're in. This is a city that thrives off its technical and technological roots and its current prowess in microelectronics design and the whole digital technology capacity that the region has, and also from the content and creative industries dimension of the city. So that confluence of those two things perhaps makes this a particularly appropriate venue to hear about the development of the wonder that is Wikipedia. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, one of the legends of the modern age, Mr. Jimmy Wales.
Well, thank you. That was Legends of the Modern Age. You will all be disappointed now. So today I'm going to talk about Wikipedia. I'm going to talk a little bit about the things I see happening in the future and some of the things I'm working on now. And I'm going to start off by talking about Wikipedia and the dream of Wikipedia. And the dream is free knowledge for all. The original concept of Wikipedia is for all of us to imagine a world in which every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. And that's what we're doing at Wikipedia. And it's a very exciting time for us because, as was mentioned, our 10th anniversary is coming up this Saturday. And all around the world, there are going to be celebrations on Saturday, over 300 events all around the world, from small to large. And I'm going to spend the entire day, which if you think about the span of a day as the sun goes around, a day is actually more than 24 hours. But most of the events are sort of in the day or in the evening, but I'm going to try to Skype in video to as many of them as I can, which is going to be kind of fun and exciting to say hi to everyone all around the world. So first of all, how many people here have used Wikipedia? Okay, that's just an exercise to see if we're awake. The real question is, how many people here have actually edited Wikipedia? Oh, that's actually really good. That's impressive. We'll be taking all your names afterwards because the UK chapter of the Wikimedia Foundation is really just this year getting started. We've had a chapter for a couple of years, but they're really energized and they're really coming together for the first time to really try to do some interesting and amazing things. So you should just search for Wikimedia UK, and we're looking for loads of volunteers and people to help out with all kinds of interesting projects that they're going to be working on. So Wikipedia began with a radical idea. In 1962, Charles Van Doren said, "The ideal encyclopedia should be radical. It should stop being safe." But if you know anything about the history of Britannica since 1962, it's been anything but radical. Wikipedia, on the other hand, is radical in several ways. So what is Wikipedia? The core definition of Wikipedia is that Wikipedia is a freely licensed encyclopedia written by thousands of volunteers in many languages. And all of that is very important to us. When I say freely licensed, I'm saying free access to human knowledge. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean more than just the cost of Wikipedia. We come from the world of free software, or open source software as most people know it. And in this world, when we talk about free, we have an old joke. We say, free as in speech, not free as in beer. So everybody loves free beer. Free beer is great. You get some free beer, you drink it, it's wonderful. But we're talking about something more fundamental and something more important than just the cost of it. With Wikipedia, everything in Wikipedia, and this includes the software, all of the text, most of the images, some of them are fair use, but for the most part, everything in Wikipedia is licensed in such a way that you're allowed to copy it, to modify it, to redistribute it, and to redistribute modified versions And you can do all of those things commercially or non-commercially. So when people are contributing to Wikipedia, they aren't just contributing to this one humanitarian project. They're contributing to a storehouse of knowledge that anyone, anywhere in the world can reuse and repurpose for anything they want. This is part of what empowers a lot of interesting local projects all around the world. And of course, in part, empowers the broad range of Wikipedia, the number of languages that we have. When I say the sum of all human knowledge, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that Wikipedia is a certain well-defined concept of an encyclopedia. Wikipedia is not everything in the world. It's not an archive. It's not a library. It's not a textbook. Wikipedia is not YouTube, so we don't have funny cat videos. I love funny cat videos. My daughter is always sending me links from YouTube, and I love it. But Wikipedia is quite a serious and earnest project, and we really focus on having a concise summary of everything in the world. We want to have clear, basic information that anyone can come and learn whatever it is that they want to know. One of the amazing things about Wikipedia is how it's created, and that is really by volunteers. I set up several years ago the Wikimedia Foundation. The Wikimedia Foundation is the charity that owns and operates Wikipedia. And my slide's a little bit out of date here because my slide says we have 35 employees. It's actually around 50 employees now. I'm a little concerned the organization is getting bloated. Just kidding. But everything you see on the website in all of the languages of the world comes from the volunteer community. The staff has almost nothing to do with the day-to-day operation of the editing processes on the site. And so if your internal model of Wikipedia is that there's a bunch of editors at the foundation who are in charge of everybody and bossing volunteers around, it doesn't work that way. In fact, if anything, it works the other way around. It's the editor volunteers are bossing the foundation around. The foundation's task is to keep Wikipedia running, essentially. It's a little bit more than that, but that's the core task. And so we have programmers, we have developers, we have people who are ops people who are keeping the servers running, accounting, legal, finance, communications, all of the functions that we need to have, fundraising, unfortunately. These are all part of what we need to keep Wikipedia running. And the rest of it is all conducted by volunteers. So it's a very tiny organization. If you can think about the scope of what we're doing, the 5th most popular website, 400 million visitors, and only 50 staff, and a budget of only $20 million is really an astounding thing. So in Wikipedia today, we have over 16 million articles. We're in over 270 different languages. Now, I actually feel like this number overstates the case. This is sort of the official number. But the number that I like to keep an eye on is the number of versions of Wikipedia that have at least 1,000 articles. That number is, the last I checked, which was just a few days ago, was 199. It might be 200 by today. It depends on if a couple of the smaller languages have been busy this week. But still, it's a lot of languages. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that while Wikipedia in English is the largest version with over 3 million articles, the total of Wikipedia, English is less than 20% of the total. And that percentage has been dropping as all of the other languages are growing faster all around the world. One of the questions people always ask me when I start talking about the global scope of Wikipedia and how we're in all these different languages all around the world, one of the most common things that comes to people's mind is, what about China? As everybody's aware, China has a fairly significant program of censorship of the internet. And it's a very, very important language, a very large language. And in fact, we were completely banned in China for about 3 years. Every language, everything was completely blocked. Just before the Olympics in Beijing, the Chinese decided to open up the internet quite a bit. So they unblocked the BBC, they unblocked us. After that, I went to Beijing and I met the minister who's in charge of censoring the internet. We had a lovely meeting. Yes, and it was actually a really funny meeting. Just because someone left, I want to tell the funny story, which is before I went there, some mutual friends, some people had arranged for me to go to this meeting, and they said, well, it's really important. You shouldn't blog about it or post on Twitter because they feel it's, don't talk to the press. They don't want you grandstanding that you're meeting with the Chinese government. It's just a private sort of get-to-know-you meeting. I said, oh, that's fine, go in and have a chat. Went in to have a chat, and it was like Bush meets Putin or something. They had 2 chairs with flowers in between, a bank of photographers. The next thing, it's on their website, and there's all this buzz about it. I think they just wanted to control the way that information was put out. Anyway, we've never compromised on censorship. Google, quite famously, went into China and agreed to cooperate with the censorship for a few years. I'm very proud of them that now, when push came to shove, they've actually pulled out of China, and I think that's a positive influence. A reporter asked me just after that happened, they said, well, now that Google's pulled out of China, will you pull out of China too? And I'm like, we never went into China. But we have a very large Chinese language website. Today, we're accessible in China. We are broadly accessible in China, I should say. They still filter certain pages, and the pages that they filter are exactly the ones you would expect. Tiananmen Square, Falun Gong, certain pages about Taiwan, not everything about Taiwan, but anything that would even discuss the possibility of Taiwanese independence is not allowed. And then lately, the Nobel Peace Prize, which they're quite agitated about. So when I met the minister, he said, I said to him, we were now accessible in China, and I said, well, it's unfortunate because we had all the access problems. They like it if you say it that way. If you say censorship, they say, oh, there's no censorship in China. Well, unfortunately, we had some access problems. And now that those have been resolved, I hope Wikipedia will grow in China, because China's very far behind in terms of Wikipedia. Everywhere around the world, Wikipedia is in the top 10 of all websites. And in China, it's only ranked around 50. And he said to me, well, there's over 2 million websites in Chinese, so 50 is not so bad. All right. However, I can say, although China is the one place I've been where I've talked to college students or high school students who had never heard of Wikipedia, and that's absolutely unheard of anywhere else in the world, it's not that we have had no cultural impact in China. Someone sent me this image. This is a menu in Beijing. Not sure you can see it there. Fried Special Wikipedia. Okay, Fried Special Wikipedia. This isn't the only one. There's more. Wikipedia fried with eggs. So somebody sent me this image and they said, Jimmy, what does this mean? And I said, I have no idea. Well, I said, no problem. I know who will know. I said, I'll ask the Beijing Wikipedians. I sent out an email. The guy wrote me back. I said, what does this mean? And he wrote me back and he said, Jimmy, I have no idea. Beef brisket in Wikipedia flavor. The closest we've been able to figure out is that just before the Olympics, a lot of the restaurants in Beijing were translating their menus for the first time because a lot of foreigners were coming. And so as they were translating the menus, I'm just imagining this picture of a guy, in the back of the restaurant. He's got his computer, and he says, well, how do you say this in English? And somebody says, I don't know. So he goes to Google, and he looks it up. And, of course, the first thing that pops up, anything you search, is Wikipedia. So he just wrote, Wikipedia. Wikipedia Bread Company. Stir-fried Wikipedia. I like the spicy food. I'm going to have the stir-fried Wikipedia with pimentos. So I've decided that if we can't make it into the top 10, I have finally a business model for Wikipedia, which is we can open a restaurant chain in China. That's my hope. Well, so anyway, this is all very fun, but I'm actually very excited. Chinese language Wikipedia is doing very well. There are still some access problems, but my view is very optimistic. The broad sweep of what China is doing is becoming more and more open, and I think they're understanding that they're not able to control the flow of information the way they were in the past. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I do believe that China will eventually abandon their current censorship policies. Well, it's hard to say. So along these lines, when we start thinking about the global nature of Wikipedia, one of the other questions people are always interested in is how does the content compare across different languages? What are the differences? Is Wikipedia completely different in all the different languages? And what I'm happy to report is that in general, Wikipedia is very, very similar in many, many different languages. What I believe is that there is a certain intellectual or certain geek culture that transcends national culture. People are The Wikipedians are very, very similar all around the world. We're a bunch of geeks, and we love science fiction and physics and all these kinds of cool things. And there is a real similarity. However, we do see some differences in what people are reading in Wikipedia, and I have a chart here which is quite interesting to take a look at. Now, what we did, this is a very limited study, so I'm not claiming scientific validity to this, but the data is actually real. So these are several of the major languages of Wikipedia. So we have English, Chinese, Japanese, French, German, Russian, and Spanish. And so one of the first things that pops out at you here is the Japanese and pop culture. It's a massive spike there for pop culture. If you know anything about Japan, this actually makes perfect sense. The Japanese do love pop culture. They love American pop culture. They love British pop culture. They love Japanese pop culture. It's a really big part of life in Japan, and so it's no surprise to me that pop culture topics are very, very popular there. Another one to look at is that the Germans are the most interested in geography. You're the ones who laughed. I don't make this joke in Germany, but they're still a little sensitive. But no, it's sort of fun. And then the other thing that I've noticed here too is that sex is popular in. It's one of the more popular topics in all of the languages except for French and Spanish. And I found this puzzling until somebody pointed out to me. It's because the French and the Spanish are actually having sex. And I guess we're all just reading about it on the internet. So anyway, so this is sort of fun. It's not really scientific. It didn't go into enough depth. But it is enough to show that, in fact, readers are interested in different topics in different places around the world. If we really dig a little more deeply, it's exactly what you would expect. If you look at what's popular even in England versus the US, you would see things related to local politics would be more interesting, to people who are directly affected by it. So, moving on just a little bit, we now have over 400 million visitors every month. And who are they? No, not who are they. Who are the people who write Wikipedia? I think that's a really important question. Why should we want to know who the Wikipedians are? I mean, it's a great website. What do we care who wrote it? And one of the interesting things, ways of looking at this was a message that someone posted on Twitter. It turns out she's a school teacher. And she says, yesterday I asked one of my students if she knew what an encyclopedia is. And she said, is it something like Wikipedia? And so when we think about young people, people who are coming up today through the schools, Wikipedia is a core, a very integral part of their experience of the world. Just this morning, first thing, I did a little school assembly here and spoke to some students. And I asked, how many of you have used Wikipedia? And basically every hand went up. I also asked them how many people edited Wikipedia, and it was a few, mostly towards the back where the older students were sitting. And so even young people are beginning to edit Wikipedia, but more than that, they're absolutely relying on it all the time. And so it's really, really important to all of us that Wikipedia be as good as it possibly can be. The quality of Wikipedia is an important cultural issue. So who are the Wikipedians? So by the numbers, we are about 87% male, which is not a good thing. Actually, this audience looks about 87% male. Maybe it's a little better than that. So one of the things that we're really looking to do is diversify the contributor base. There is a certain predominance of tech geek males in the project, which is a perfectly fine thing, but even they will say, the problem with this is we're really, really good at certain technical topics, but there's a lot of things we don't know as much about, and we really want to have more people who bring in knowledge from other spheres to help fill out those articles. Someone emailed me once and said, I just wrote the best article I could. This was many years ago. I just wrote the best article I could about a Shakespeare play, but honestly, I'm a computer programmer. I'm not the right person to be doing this. We should think about this. So we're trying to diversify the contributor base in lots of ways. The average age is around 26. Somebody told me a different survey said 27, but I mean, you get the general idea. It's late 20s. And then we're a pretty geeky crowd. We have double the percentage of PhDs relative to the general public. And so that sort of gives you an idea. It's a very smart group of people and very well educated overall. Somebody sent me this fabulous chart. Who are the amateur encyclopedists? We're at the center of this Venn diagram between intelligence, obsession, and lots of free time. Sometimes we don't really have the free time, but we make it somehow in the middle of the night. But this is actually true, and the obsession and the real amazing attention to detail and the real passion in the community for getting it right is really something to behold. You can go to just about any topic, however obscure, click on the discussion page, and there's probably been some kind of controversy or discussion that's happened there. When it's working well, it's actually really quite heartwarming and uplifting to see people really obsessively working out exactly how to word some particular detail or whether or not a particular source is valid for some fact. Of course, it doesn't always work perfectly well. We're human beings, so people get into big fights and things like that. But in the main, it's a very friendly group of people who are very passionate about getting it right, and that makes all the difference. So this past summer in Poland, we had our annual conference, which we have every year. We call it Wikimania, and at Wikimania, a whole bunch of community members come from all around the world. And we did some filming of them because we wanted to really put a human face on the project. A lot of people who are just users of Wikipedia, it's just this big website, and it seems amazing, but you know, it's really hard to imagine who's writing it. And so I'm going to show you now a quick video with some of the contributors of Wikipedia.
If you have knowledge, why you must keep it by yourself? You must share it, I think.
I liked that the purpose of this website didn't say website, didn't say wiki, didn't say internet, it just said free knowledge for everyone in their own language.
When a community is open, it's really made of those who dare taking this invitation. And this is an invitation. Of course, you don't have to take an invitation, but there is an invitation out there in an edit button to say, come be part. What you know is as important as what we know.
You know, you're giving education to people, and not just any people, but the whole of the world. So I feel great by contributing to an encyclopedia that is accessible to virtually everyone in the whole world.
It's just making yourself happy by helping others, that's it. Because I want to be happy, I help others.
You're working together with so many different people from so many different cultures, and it's just amazing.
The thing about it, for me, what it's really about, it's just really sweet people. You know, we've got all these really sweet people who are they get online and they're typing, and instead of yelling at each other or just having a conversation or reading about gossip or whatever, they're trying to build something that everybody else will find useful. I just think it's really sweet, really nice people.
Okay, great. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things I'm working on now. And so when I think about my work and I think about this concept of free knowledge for everyone, well, the encyclopedia was the start. When we think about an encyclopedia, if you go to a traditional library, you ask to see the encyclopedia, they show you a set of books about this big, and yet the encyclopedia is just one piece. The library is much, much bigger, and the number of things that people may be able to collaborate on is quite large. And so I started to think a few years ago, beyond Wikipedia, what can come next, what can be adjunct and accessory to Wikipedia. And this is the concept behind Wikia, which is a completely separate organization. And at Wikia, the idea is to take specific topics and go really, really deep, much deeper than we could do in the Wikipedia world. So if you think about, this is an example, Twilight, the novel. So this is a vampire novel popular with, it's mostly women, young girls, but also grown women. That's the demographic. And at Wikipedia, we'll have the one article about the Twilight novel, we'll have an article about the Twilight movie, article about the author, and so on. Basically, probably 20 to 50 articles, depending on what all has been covered. Whereas at Wikia, we have the Twilight Wiki, which is a wiki written by the fans who are obsessively devoted to the series. And they've written 875 articles, and this slide's a little bit old, so it's quite deep. And the possibilities here, if you really open your mind to think about it, are really quite wide. People can write about all kinds of things in really amazing and obsessive detail. So Glee Wiki, most of the things that we've had that have been particularly successful have been in the entertainment and gaming worlds, so geek culture. But also we're having some success with things like the Recipes Wiki. And one of the things that we've done at Wikia is we've done a lot of experimentation and innovation to make the user interface easier, to make the editing process easier, so that we can diversify the contributor base. And of course, all the software that we produce at Wikia, we release under open source license. So it's possible that some of the elements would be appropriate for Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia will benefit from that work in the long run. So it's all about creation. But one of the interesting things that's beginning to happen, if we think about participatory culture very broadly, is that we are moving from an era of broadcast culture, where a tiny group of people put something together, broadcast it to the world for enjoyment, and we're moving into more of an interactive world. How many people here are familiar with the TV show Lost? Okay, lots of people familiar. How many of you actually understood the TV show Lost? Yeah, that's what I thought. So there was this is a quote from an interview that I found fascinating. So the writers were stumped. They were looking to make a reference to Canada, except nobody on staff was exactly sure how they had done it in the past. So if you know Lost, it's an incredibly complicated, multi-layered TV show with a lot of subtle points and a lot of interesting things in it. And so what did they do? Well, they looked it up in Lostpedia. So Lostpedia is a wiki written by the community. They've written some 7,000 articles about this one TV show, Lost. And basically what they do at Lostpedia is they've got articles about, of course, every character, all the actors, all of the episodes. But they also have articles about every little detail that you see in the show. So if, for example, you see someone reading a particular book in the show, they'll write an article about that book. And so if it's, I don't know, Jane Austen, they will write an article about Jane Austen, but not a general Wikipedia entry about Jane Austen, but an article about Jane Austen that would relate it to the series to say, why was that character reading that book at that moment in time? What did the writers mean by that? Why were they doing that? Is it a hint? Is it a clue? Does it help flesh out the character? So they're going really, really in depth in their analysis, which meant that the writers of the show didn't have to keep all this in their own minds. And in fact, a lot of what was going on is that as the writers were writing the show, they were reading Lostpedia and modifying the show to satisfy what the fans were interested in. So does anybody know what it is with Canada? Well, it turns out anytime someone mentions Canada in the TV show Lost, they're lying. Amazing. So somehow this is the kind of thing that this community discovered and noticed. The writers didn't even remember it themselves. What I'm really dying to know, but I haven't had a chance to find out yet, is was it initially ever an idea on the staff of the show, or did it just happen? Because actually in Lost, people are lying all the time. There's lots of lying in the show. It might have started out as an accident, and then when they looked in Lostpedia, they saw that, oh, hey, people think that if you mention Canada, you're lying. Let's run with that. Let's actually make that a part of the show. So it's a really interesting collaboration then between the fans and the producers of the show, which I think has a lot of implications for a lot of kinds of culture. One of the things that I think has happened today, and this runs counter to the standard storyline, which is culture's going downhill, everybody's getting dumber all the time. We had that storyline for a long time, and going back to Elvis Presley, the kids today. But in fact, there's actually a lot of reason for optimism. When you have a TV show like Lost that has a huge number of literary allusions, complexity in the plot, it's really a very dense and complicated show of a kind that you can hardly even imagine if you think back to the era of I Love Lucy, which is a great show, but very simple, funny comedy, to the kinds of programs we have today that are incredibly sophisticated and complicated, which, in fact, it would be very, very difficult for people, as I said, how many of you understood it? I didn't. But I understood it a lot better because there's such an access to this kind of resource where I can actually really chew on the show and talk to people about it and discuss it in new ways. It enables us to experience a much richer and more complicated culture. So I'm going to close now, and then we're going to have questions. But I'm going to show you one more video of some Wikipedians, and this is my favorite video. So.
No, I don't have superpowers at all. No. You could totally do it.
I pushed the button and saved the text. Ooh. It was exciting.
You just changed Wikipedia. You just added your own contribution to Wikipedia.
I read an article in The Guardian about this online encyclopedia which everybody can contribute to. And I thought, whoa, maybe I can contribute too as well.
I edited it the first time and I think I got addicted to it. I don't get paid anything. I just do it for, something to do in my free time, that's it.
you may start doing it for an idea because you believe in it, but you end up with friends, you end up with lovers, you end up with wonderful discussions, you end up with new ideas, you end up with the new books you're going to write.
You're not writing the article alone. You write a piece and somebody else goes like, hey, I have more, and together you can create articles that are pages long, which you can't by yourself.
Then you have success. You always see, okay, what I've done was successful, and this is great, because so editing is a great feeling every time you do it.
As I say, when I read about Wikipedia, I decided that this is maybe where I would fit in, and I did.
Great. All right, so I think we're going to have questions. I think we've got questions that were sent in advance, and you're going to help me with them?
Let us first say thank you to Jimmy for a fantastic...
Oh, thank you.
Okay, now, one thing I omitted to say that many of you will be aware of, that the Twitter feed for today's event is #WP10, so those of you online in the room or online elsewhere can engage and interact with today's event by that medium. Now, prior to today's event, there was plenty of that sort of input, and it falls to me to read out, just for logistical reasons, some of the input, but we have our questioners here in the front of the audience, and I'll start with one of them from one of our local Wikipedians, Rod Ward. And the question goes as follows. During the first few years, Wikipedia expanded massively, both in terms of the numbers of articles and the numbers of editors. The rate of growth has slowed somewhat in recent years as the emphasis has shifted from quantity to quality. Could you expand further on your vision for the next 5 or 10 years, both in terms of content generation and attracting new editors, perhaps with a different demographic, as you were referring to here?
When we look at the growth of Wikipedia, let's just talk about the growth in the content. It has slowed to some extent as it's become harder and harder to find subjects about which we don't have an article. So the rate of creation of new articles has slowed down, and that was to be expected. Also, the rate of growth, say in English, for example, of the readership has also slowed down, but that is easy to explain. When you're already the 5th most popular website online, you can't continue to double your audience every few months. That doesn't make any sense. Everybody's already on Wikipedia. I mean, of the people in this room, we can't really get more people. You're all already on Wikipedia. In terms of the way I see the next few years, there has been a turn from quantity to quality. Particularly in the English Wikipedia and some of the other large Wikipedias. One of the things that I like to talk about is as a bit of a cautionary tale for some of the smaller language Wikipedias. One of the things that is a mistake that some small language Wikipedias do is they assume that the first thing they need to do is translate all the policies from English Wikipedia, which is the last thing you need. When you've got 500 entries, you don't need English Wikipedia's, 12,000 pages of editorial policies. It's just overkill. Instead, you just need to get started and don't worry about the quality at first. Just get started and write Bristol is a city. Okay, great, we've got Bristol now. Maybe somebody can add something later. In terms of, for the English Wikipedia, I think the main thing that we're looking to do is to diversify the contributor base, bring in more different kinds of people, and the ways of doing that have to do with outreach. Really working with, one of the things that the chapters have started to do, which is a really great thing, is working with galleries, libraries, and museums to see about bringing in some good quality editors and people from that community, but also to help them understand how they can donate pictures and things like this to Wikipedia to help us improve the quality. Another thing is the editing interface. One of the problems that Wikipedia has always struggled with is that when you click on edit, our ideal is you click edit, you make a change, and you save it, and it's obvious and simple, and that the technology should be invisible. The technology should never be a barrier to contribution. If you know something, you should be able to help us to improve Wikipedia. Unfortunately, many times if you click on edit, you see a whole bunch of editing codes, you see tables. Our table syntax is a nightmare. We have templates, but there's a struggle here. So when we think about why does Wikipedia look as nice as it does, why does it do all the things it does, part of it is the editing software is very powerful. It's incredibly useful, and we have to support that. We have to support the power editors, the people who are doing all the work today. We can't just revamp the interface and make it easy to edit and lose all that power. So we have to find ways of moving forward to make it easier to edit while not losing the strength. And that takes a long time, it takes a lot of work. And there's a lot of progress that's been made in that area. We'll be rolling things out in the coming years. So for me, that is really what it's all about, is bringing in more people, bringing in a more diverse body. And also the size, the quantity of things in Wikipedia will continue to increase, but just at a slower rate. Because when you've got already 3.5 million entries, there's a lot there already.
I'm wondering whether the journey you're on is not wholly different from that the gaming industry has been on. It started out with a similar demographic, but has reached out into all sorts of age groups and demographics that has not previously weren't their business before.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I mean, one of the interesting things about Wikipedia is that we are very, very mission-driven. What we care about is a free encyclopedia for every single person on the planet. And so the gaming industry, and this is going to sound like a criticism, but it's not at all, what they're interested in is as much of your money as they can get their hands on. I mean, that's what they do. They're making games. They hope they entertain you, but honestly, it's about signing up people. So their motive for diversifying their base is really commercial, and they're willing to create a product that will appeal to as many people as possible. But they also have to keep their core products the same. They do different things. For us, that's not our approach. I mean, we could probably make Wikipedia more popular if we introduced free webmail accounts and Twitter-like service, or we could copy Facebook. I mean, Facebook has a lot of page views, but that's not our purpose. Our purpose is to create the encyclopedia. So as we change the software to broaden out, it's going to be really within that framework of thinking about the encyclopedia first.
Okay, next question, which comes from Chris Gray, again here in the audience. Do you see Wikipedia as having a place in the movement away from traditional linear or flat graph knowledge, as Wikipedia uses, towards a semantically structured network information source that would allow interrogation and justification systems, the better to structure the world's knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, I was just reading it out. I didn't know it.
No, so this is a question that it's a very rich question if you dig deeper. When we take a look at Wikipedia, within Wikipedia, it's fairly structured. There's a fair amount of structured data within it, particularly when you look at our info boxes. So, when you go to an article and you see the little box to the side with the basic information, that's in a basically machine-readable format. It's a bit inconsistent and things like that, but it's sort of okay. When people think about semantic markup and making things more machine-readable, I get excited. That sounds really great. However, the problem is it's written by humans, and humans need to be able to write it. So there have been projects, Semantic Media Wiki is an example. So they took the Media Wiki software and enhanced it with some semantic markup so that you can tag things as being a population figure or something like this. The problem is it makes the editing just that much harder, so that a newcomer who comes in and they click edit, they see these even more weird codes. So it's a real struggle to think about how do you make it easy for humans to create something that also in the end gives you some structured data that makes it easy to do sophisticated queries and things like that. So there's a lot of work going on in that area that I'm excited about, but I don't think we're going to see Wikipedia become fundamentally about that. If you want to take a look at some interesting things, the people at MetaWeb have done some interesting things, and the people at Wolfram Alpha, they've done some really amazing things in terms of digging out information from Wikipedia. But they had to do it the hard way. They went through Wikipedia and sort of tried to understand it with all of its messiness. But they've done an amazing job, so it's a really interesting area.
I'm going to switch now to one of the questions that have come in from our interactive audience. Sam from Wikimedia UK.
Hello. Okay, so we've got at the moment around about 3,000 people watching us live in the webcast right now.
Hello, Internet.
So Bristol, say hello to them.
Hello, Internet.
Great. Okay, so I've got 3 questions for you which have come in. First one is from Rachel. This is all via Cover It Live, which we're using. So Rachel asks, what are Jimmy's plans to combat vandalism on Wikipedia?
Swords. Combat vandalism. So, it's interesting because vandalism as we define it in the community, is actually a very minor problem. There are people who, come to Wikipedia and they insert the word, blah, 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 eggs, blah, 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 and that's actually fairly easy to detect, and it doesn't really cause the public a lot of trouble. I mean, people rarely see it, is one thing that we know. But when they do see it, and they see, Bristol is a city in England, eggs, its population is, they go, okay, that's funny, but whatever. They ignore it. And so I think the problem of vandalism is under control for the most part, but let's go a little deeper. So there are cases where somebody putting in malicious information is actually harmful. It's not just somebody goofing around. And the main area where that would be a major concern for us is in biographies of living people. That's one of the most important areas of responsibility for Wikipedia. And we have a very, very strict policy and a very strict set of policies. And the community over time has become increasingly interested in making sure that those rules are followed. And in terms of the software, there's several different tools that we use. So one of the things we can do is if somebody is vandalizing Wikipedia, they can be blocked. And that happens very quickly if you're putting in curse words and being ridiculous. You just get blocked very quickly. Normally it's a short-term block, just to sort of let you know we're not going to let you do that. The next thing that can happen is pages can be protected or semi-protected. Semi-protected just means, if you've been around for a while, you can still edit it, but very new accounts and people who are unregistered can't edit it. That actually does a huge amount to cut down on vandalism. If you take a page like George W. Bush, for example, if you completely unprotect George W. Bush, it takes about 37 seconds until somebody replaces it with curse words. And then, I remember when we first started semi-protecting George W. Bush, occasionally the brave admin would say, I don't think we should do this, we should leave it open for editing, and then, sort of unprotect it. And then, sort of 6 hours later, they would be exhausted and say, okay, I give up, obviously I was mistaken. But semi-protection, where you just say that it cuts out, 99% of the vandalism of that type. But the problem with semi-protection is someone who turns up and they want to make an edit, a good faith edit to George W. Bush, can't. Because it's protected. They have to sign up and wait a few days. And that's unfortunate. We don't like that. And so part of the solution of that has been we have developed software called pending changes, which allows an article to be put into a state such that, unlike semi-protection, you're allowed to edit it if you're a new editor, but your edit doesn't go live. And so hopefully this would do two things. So first, it allows us to open up entries that we used to have to protect or semi-protect. At the same time, because it's gentler, we're able to use it in a wider context. We're reluctant to do semi-protection. We might be less reluctant to use this. So it's a bit of opening Wikipedia and a bit of closing. It's just changing the parameters to really try to target where are the problems. Now, it turns out in our test of pending changes, the first test we did, and we're going to do a new one soon with a new version of the software, it was very popular in the community, 65% support. I want it to be a higher level of support than that, but it didn't turn out to work very well on something like George W. Bush or Barack Obama, because, again, if you make it possible for people to edit, basically all the vandalism would happen, and it was good. The public didn't see that vandalism, but yet when the community had to go in and look through it, they had to look through all this junk, and it was just boring and a waste of time. So they just went back to semi-protection. So that problem we haven't solved as well. But the problem of, say, obscure biographies being vandalized by someone who hates someone, I think pending changes is really the right answer for that, and we're probably going to move in that direction. So it's mostly about putting tools in the hands of the core community, the people who really care about the Wikipedia, to allow them to protect the site more, while at the same time making it still easy and open for anyone who has good faith desire to contribute can easily come in and join the community. So it's that balancing act that we're always after.
Okay, thank you. Second question comes from Dan Oliver, who asks, Jimmy, what are your views on net neutrality?
What are my views on net neutrality? So I guess the first thing I should say is that the Wikimedia Foundation, which is the nonprofit that owns and operates Wikipedia, takes no political positions on anything whatsoever, including net neutrality. That's important because I want to make clear that my views are not necessarily the views of either the community or the Wikimedia Foundation. My view is that many of the people who are in favor of legislating for net neutrality are acting in good faith, but they're very naive about what they're doing, and that they are at risk of introducing regulation that will slow down innovation online, and in many cases they will mandate pricing models that may not really be the right thing that they're looking for. I should say my views on the topic are very complicated and very policy wonky when you get right down to it. So I don't have a nice soundbite, except to say it's a very complicated issue, and in my view, a highly overblown issue. A lot of the rhetoric around net neutrality is around people fearing certain things that might happen that don't even seem close to being about to happen. If you want to get paranoid, as I love to do, about threats to the open nature of the internet, the bit about net neutrality doesn't strike me as where the action is taking place right now. Where the action is taking place right now is in the development of the apps model, which is in some ways an incredible boon. There's some really interesting and amazing things going on. However, the concern that you have to have is, I have an iPad. I love my iPad. My daughter is learning to program, and I want to teach her how to program. Frankly, it's not easy to think about how can she learn to program on an iPad, because in order to make software and distribute it, you can distribute it to a handful of friends if they do this very complicated thing with getting a key and all this. But to actually just distribute it for free, say, oh look, I wrote this cool app, everybody can have it for free, and you can look at my source code and everything, you have to get permission from Apple. And so that choke point that we have in the Apple apps model is very dangerous and something that I am concerned about. And unlike net neutrality, where there's sort of this philosophical idea of what if the cable company decides to shut down Skype, it's actually practical. It's actually going on right now. And I think it's something people should be very aware of, that it's really important when you own a device and I own a device and you're a programmer, you want to give me your software, we should not have to get permission from anyone else. We own the device, we should control it. And I think that's really, really important. And so the kinds of things people are worried about with net neutrality, great, fine, it's an interesting, complicated debate. For me, that's not where the real action is. The real action is thinking about, are apps a threat to the diverse and open ecosystem?
Okay, thank you. Last question comes from Dan Cook, who asks, what would Jimmy say to universities that will not allow students to use Wikipedia as a place to, as a resource for work?
So in this case, I think it depends on exactly how you word the question. If you say, and you kept adding words to it. So if the first thing you say is, don't allow students to use Wikipedia, I say good luck. You can also tell them not to listen to rock and roll music. Everyone's using Wikipedia. Then you say, as a resource, right? Oh, well, as a resource, of course, if you're using it, it's a resource. And if you're using it seriously for your schoolwork, that's a great thing. The question is, should you be able to cite Wikipedia? Quote from Wikipedia and cite it as if it's a valid source? And my answer is no. Particularly at the university level, you shouldn't be citing the Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, it's really a bit of a middle school thing to do, read an encyclopedia article and cite it. And in fact, if middle school students do that, I think we should be perfectly fine with it. I mean, hey, they wrote something, and they put a footnote in. Yay! It's great, right? But at the university level, my view is that that's not the role of an encyclopedia in the research process. The role for an encyclopedia is whatever you're trying to learn about. You should have a quick introduction, you should have background knowledge. Very often you should use an encyclopedia as an interesting side note of something that you needed to understand to get a richer understanding. I give the example, suppose you're in a literature class and you're reading a novel that was set in World War II, and something is mentioned about the Battle of the Bulge, and you think, oh, Battle of the Bulge, I've heard of that, I remember that from history, I don't remember that much about it. You go to Wikipedia and you read our entry on the Battle of the Bulge, so then you suddenly understand what was the strategic implication, what were the soldiers facing, what was really going on there. So then when you come back to the novel, you have a richer understanding of the context of those characters. Then when you go to write your paper about that novel, there's no reason to cite Wikipedia. You use Wikipedia to get a broader understanding of the context, not to actually quote something and put it into your paper. And that's the right way to use Wikipedia. If you're doing your PhD dissertation on the Battle of the Bulge, you don't quote Wikipedia. It doesn't make any sense. So I think it's about intelligently using Wikipedia. And you notice that I haven't talked at all about the quality. I think that is going to be true no matter how good the quality of Wikipedia. I just don't think that's what an encyclopedia is for in the research process. What we want is for Wikipedia to be Britannica or better quality. So we want it to be very, very high quality. Even if it's high quality, I'm not concerned about whether people can cite it as a source.
Okay, I got two points.
No?
Okay. I've got prior questions.
We've
so
got some here.
You're going to have to
Take turns.
do a mix. And I want to give those that put
no fighting, gentlemen.
Right. So on the subject of academia, and this is a question from Simon Smart, another of our local Wikipedians. Wikipedia is often viewed as inaccurate by academics, not by this one I might say, yet would be improved if more academics contributed. What can be done to encourage more academics to contribute?
Absolutely.
And does the fact that the number of Wikipedians fallen concern you? I wonder whether that's true across all language bases, but that's the question.
Yeah, so there's many aspects of that. So in order to encourage more academics to contribute, so first of all, I think that would be incredibly valuable. I think we want to have more academics contributing. And there's a lot of things that we can do about that. One of the things we can do is outreach, particularly through the chapters. So in Germany, the German chapter is the oldest and most mature chapter. It's the largest chapter, it's the most well-funded chapter, and they've held many events where they go out to a university and they have a Wikipedia Academy where they teach faculty and students to contribute. And they've been very welcoming and very proactive in trying to get more professors and graduate students to contribute. And as a result, in general, German Wikipedia has a reputation for being the highest quality Wikipedia. My ability to read German is very, very bad, so I can't really verify that myself, but I think there are good reasons to think that that's true. Now, I think a part of it has to do with understanding the needs of academics and understanding what they're interested in. Certainly, a lot of young academics in particular are very, very stressed out people because they're trying to get tenure and they have to publish, they have to teach, they have a lot on their plate. I think as they mature in their career, I think most academics, particularly the best academics, they view their role in society fairly broadly, and they think about things like, I'm supposed to be in my work, I want to be at the forefront of research and innovating and learning new things and expanding the knowledge of the world. I need to teach my students, which is a very personal thing and a very intense and in-depth thing, which is teaching at the university level. And then finally, I should be a public intellectual. I should be contributing in a positive way to the world. And that's the area where Wikipedia comes into play. Because if you're an academic and you want to help enhance the general knowledge of the world, there's no better place to come than to Wikipedia, where everyone is turning to for knowledge. And so I think that's really important. So, all of these things are important. I think outreach is very important. And then part of the question was fall in the number of active contributors. That's been overblown in many reports. So, for example, there was a study that was widely cited because it was in the Wall Street Journal. That was not a very good research study. It wasn't really accurate. One of the things that we do see, though, is that in the English Wikipedia, things have leveled off. So, number of active contributors level off. It goes up and down. I'm not super concerned about it. I will be concerned if it begins to fall precipitously, but I don't think that's going to happen. To get a little bit too inside for general audience, one of the concerns I do have, as an active concern I have, is that the number of people who are administrators is falling. The number of active administrators, not just active editors, but active administrators. And in fact, the number of people who become administrators, the number of new administrators has fallen a lot. That, I think, is directly attributable to internal policy and the incredible gauntlet we make people run today to become administrators. And the whole, as we call it, RFA process, I think is broken and is problematic. So back before, I think it was just before Christmas, I hosted sort of a huge, epic Wikipedia, we love our epic discussions on my talk page in English Wikipedia. And then I've promised to go through that discussion and present what we call an NPOV summary, a neutral point of view summary. I want to summarize what was said in that discussion. Unfortunately, this week I'm slammed, and every week I've been slammed. So probably in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to go back and go to that archive discussion, summarize what has been said, and try to put forward some proposals to the community about what are some of the ways that we can encourage more people to be administrators. Because administrators are very, very important to the work. We haven't seen any negative impact from it. It's not like Wikipedia's been abandoned by the administrators, but I think in the long run, we need to have a healthy and strong core of administrators.
Okay, I'm afraid, to my disappointment, time is running out here, and I know that Jimmy has travel plans that are critical to fulfill. So I'd like to draw things to a close by thanking Jimmy, thanking him for giving us a story about the transformation of our world that's happened as a result of the possibility of doing what you might call participatory content provision, opening out our culture in the interactive age. It poses for my sort of organisation, the University of Bristol, some fantastic and interesting challenges to think about the nature of truth, the possibility of collective wisdom, the technical and creative challenges that are posed. But I think perhaps the most inspiring thing for me is the prospect of collective wisdom. Jimmy was very humble in saying, don't trust me, trust the collective wisdom, and that sense of altruism and the coherent and collective view that can come out of reaching out to the globe is quite humbling and inspiring. And I'm very grateful for Jimmy for sharing that with us. I'm very grateful to our sponsors and supporters today. This is not the last Bristol Festival of Ideas or University of Bristol public event on this sort of topic or many others, so do keep in touch with us on that front. But let us close by thanking you, the audience here, the audience on the web, and most of all, Jimmy Wales. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you who are still watching this webcast, hello, my name's Sam Downey. I'm going to let you know that I'm going to be following Jimmy Wales today, in the next few hours. I'm joining him on a train to London, where there's a party taking place later. Hopefully I'll try and do a live webcast, but via my phone instead.
So here's my phone. And so look out for that. So that'll be online, I reckon, between 7 and 9 this evening, GMT. Then also on the train itself, I'm asking Jimmy Wales even more questions. The questions we didn't have time to ask him. So all those will come through. So and that video will be up online tomorrow. It'll be on Brism. It'll be on various websites online, including there's a Posterous website, which if you haven't explored it yet, people are posting to it already. You'll find it at wp10bristol.posterous.com. All right, thanks for watching. See you later. You all right, Sarah? Okay, all right, thank you, and I'm going to stop this broadcast right now. All right, thank you for watching us. All of this is being archived anyway, so an archive is going to be online at brism.tv and also the Brism TV channel on ustream.com. You'll find a Brism TV channel. Brism is spelled BRRISM, M for mother, and I'll be able to get a replay of the webcast right then. Alright, so thank you for watching and listening to the Jimmy Wales webcast live from Bristol in southwest England, which is also known as Silicon Gorge. Look it up on Wikipedia. Thanks for watching.